Welcome to another edition of Minot Talk.
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
And it's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays we go live. And today we are joined by former Mayor Shaun Sipma. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Finally
Glad
here
to
with
be here. It's still raining. But,
Yes, still raining.
finally here with the both of us in studio this time.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit odd.
Yeah.
A little more confined. in
More
there.
cramped. Yeah, we got you trapped in the middle. It's,
First time was about 9 months ago. That was when liquor licenses first came up. Sorry about that. We were talking about that before, but and then last time it was right after we realized there was going to be, or we didn't realize there was going to be a mayoral race. At that point, we assumed that potentially it would just be appointed by council, and then there was some signatures that were turned in, and now we're in the middle of things, aren't we?
yeah, no one, I don't think at that point had actually officially announced anything at that stage.
No, I don't think it had been or confirmed.
Or
the
it
number
was,
of signatures
were
had been
verified
Right.
yet, or
Yep. Yep.
But here we are.
But
now.
here we are,
Yeah.
and we're marching down not only one special election, but two special elections, and they changed the law at the legislature now for special elections, and holy cow,
Yeah.
a lot happened last night.
Yeah. What a place to be.
First, we had Mr. Shane Gettle with like a 45-minute overview of the entire legislative session, which was, I think he did a great job. But
I think that's a miracle in itself that you can condense what happened at the legislature in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you take all of the chaos and the chicanery that went on down there with some of the different bills and which ones got sidelined, which ones didn't, and then being able to tie it all into
into what's relevant to
what's
Minot.
relevant to Minot, what's relevant to us.
Right. Of course, one of the big things that came out of the legislative deal was the property tax change that's going to affect Minot and all the cities through North Dakota. Is the cap the right move? You've worked on a couple budgets in your history as being mayor. It seems like it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to characterize it. It's the necessary evil when you take a look at some of the different challenges when it comes to the inflationary stuff that's going on right now within the community, within all budgets.
Yeah.
Here's the challenge. Nobody wanted to actually acknowledge one of the biggest issues, not only for our community, but every community, and that's what's the plan for the infrastructure? And I'm talking about all of the underground pipes and things like that. Now, the answer, I'm sure Senator Hogan, some of the others might say, well, that we have the Water Resources Trust Fund and a lot of other grant dollars that can be identified for that. But at the end of the day, the communities ourselves, we're supposed to be responsible for our own infrastructure, not just putting it in, but maintaining it and being able to, work independently from the state. That's not the case. That's one area that we just don't want to talk about.
No, you're right. It seems like there's these certain areas like that it's just becoming assumed that the state's going to take care of it, and that's not the greatest place for communities, especially like ours where we're trying to grow. I understand that some of the smaller communities probably are going to need that state funding more, and it makes sense, but not you don't like that for your large communities in North Dakota, I wouldn't think. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, it leaves a lot on the table for places like Minot, Fargo, Grand Forks. But at the same time, hopefully NAS is finishing up in not too long, and maybe that can open up a little bit more breathing room for Minot.
And I think when you take a look at the cap, that's specific to the mill levy in regards to the property value, in regards to what you're paying on your property tax. That says nothing about the special assessments. That says nothing about sales tax. There's other ways to handle some of this. Now, ours might be a little bit limited because of flood control and what we're already allocating towards flood control with sales tax, but don't think for a moment that there isn't other ways that those dollars can be raised.
It's true. Right. Yeah. Do you obviously special assessments is something that there's some that have advocated hard against. Is that something that should be considered in Minot?
I'd hope we'd try to stay away from that as much as possible, only because when we were going through those really tough budget sessions in 17 and 18, that's where we saw those big increases. Likely where some of this conversation got spurred from, dialing to today. But we had taken a look at the special assessment issues, and we had brought up, I don't know how many things from the Bismarck Tribune and others, where there were people that were selling their houses because now they had a $27,000 special assessment that had to be paid over 5 years. Special assessments hit hard in a very specific area. It works better if they're spread out into a ginormous geographic area, but it is a mechanism that can be used and can be used properly, but it can also be horribly detrimental. to fixed income folks, to low income areas. I mean, we're right back into the overall debate of property tax.
That's all.
It's a little more magnified.
Right. Yep. No, that makes sense.
And the city of Minot's already starting to work towards how they're going to deal with this over the next few years. David Lakefield was up with his finance report, and was starting to go over a couple of different routes, if they're going to go just with a flat 3% incremental thing, or if they're going to have a plus or minus 3% board. They're kind of working on a couple different options for it, and sounds like end of June they're going to have a lot of those budget options ready to roll.
It seems like you'd be incentivized just to always increase by 3%, just always max out.
Yeah, there it is.
There
it is. Yeah. Now, that may not be the case for somebody who's trying to get reelected.
Yeah, right.
There's definitely process and planning with this, but overall, yes, you are probably going to see from a lot of governing bodies that 3% being the
norm.
The norm, and if I was listening to Mr. Gettle correctly and reading into the state law correctly, so if you don't use your full 3% and let's say only do a 1.5%, now that 1.5% can be brought back.
Gotcha. So you can do 4.5%.
You could go 4.5% under the guidelines, but don't get me wrong. Going back to finance directors, we're going to show you -3, we're going to show you even, we're going to show you +3. There's a narrative there. If you want to cut, and don't get me wrong, it's storytelling. If you want to cut, we can do it, but we're going to have to slice off all of this.
Right.
I think Alderman Blessum had talked about that is, we want to know if we're cutting taxes, what we're going to lose for it. But I think Mr. Lakefield has done a very good job of helping to become a storyteller.
Right.
Of here's what the money looks like, and here's what you have to lose to get to where you want to be.
Right. Yeah. He does excellent with that. I think I enjoy him. I feel like he does a good job. And you're right. He has tried to lay out many pictures so that way it's very clear as to what's going to happen, and the numbers are real rather than just being money on a long spreadsheet.
Yeah, but did you see the spreadsheet that he was showing to everone last night? If anyone's a spreadsheet person, man, that's the coup de grace for Minot.
Sure, he's teach a few classes on that. But all right, so there's that. There's a couple big events coming up in June. One of them's, of course, the mayoral debate. That's probably the biggest.
Of course, right? For us, yeah.
But there's a election, I guess, that's going on.
Some kind of sales tax thing.
Right. Yeah.
Are we gonna turn the part of the property tax over into sales tax and Parks and Rec, or do we want to build an indoor turf facility? Yeah.
Do you buy into the deal? It was mentioned by somebody. We'll leave it at that. That the main priority for that is to reduce sales tax. A secondary thing of that is to get a new facility. Does that seem right?
Reduce property tax, you mean?
Yeah, that's the main priority of that measure is to reduce property tax. The secondary priority is to get the new indoor facility.
Going back to Mr. Lakefield, it's great storytelling.
Yeah.
That's the narrative, right?
Because that's what go and make them two separate things we can vote on then. Because I think I'm interested in trying out the sales tax. I know some people are. That's terrible. It's the worst kind of tax because it hurts the low income people the most, things like that. And I hear that, but I'm interested to see how the long term effect is on that on a 5 to 10. It's a very small, when you look at it, it's a great litmus test for this. Is this something that could be sustainable long term, especially as our taxes are going to change with some of our sales tax eventually going off? And what should we do with that? Should we just keep it there? Should we get rid of it?
Which sales tax has ever gone off?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It doesn't. And especially when you look at it at
just shifts around
at how far away it's going to be from now. People are going to be so used to it, and probably 8% sales tax will be low. But this whole facility in the deal, that's the thing that's created a lot of questions. I think if you just had the standalone tax, it would pass. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think there'd be a lot less question if it was a standalone thing, but at the same time, I feel so much of it is intertwined with the building, but not just the new building. A lot of it, so much they want to do is going to end up going to their maintenance costs and everything too.
This is big.
And I guess, would that be tied in with the building, or would the maintenance costs just be tied in with the original, property tax side of it or not? So property versus sales.
Part of that narrative also on the discussion of impact to the facility itself, to the rest of the community. I mean, that's also got to be talked about. When people say, why are you going to Minot? What is there to do in Minot?
Right.
Quality of life.
Yeah.
Is that something that is better paid for through property taxes, or is it something that's better paid through on sales tax and hopefully some of the people that are coming in to utilize that facility are only adding into that sales tax to pay it off faster.
Right.
And then there are the people that just say that, and this is the part where sometimes you really have to pay attention. It was about 2015. If you remember, we were talking about this indoor water park facility.
Sure.
And a group had come forward and saying, here's what we want. And the parks came forward pushing this to sales tax, and we were going to reduce property tax. And there was this whole big effort talking about the narrative of if private industry can do it, they should do it, and government should never do it. Private group came forward and says, no, we are planning this. This is going to completely compete with what we're doing. And it's amazing how that vote failed. Yep. And then those plans dissolved overnight and nothing ever happened. So are we going to repeat exactly what happened in 2015?
10 years ago.
Yeah. Or are we going to work in a different direction?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think overall, if it's managed well, and I come from the viewpoint that our Minot Parks does a good job, if it's managed well, then it probably could be a good thing for Minot. You're probably going to pull in some revenue. You're going to have the increase in sales tax, but you're also going to have something to do on a day like today. I guess the whole city might not be able to show up on a rainy day, but there's going to be still some indoor activities that can happen. I think that's probably a good thing as well.
Those little 6 months where we get that white stuff.
Yeah, that white stuff. Yeah. Right. You barely want to get out of your house. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And what's interesting is we don't have a lot of accommodations for that time. Like, it's such a big part of our culture, right? It's who we are. When you talk North Dakota, when you talk Minot, you talk snow, you talk cold,
part of the conversation.
How you are inside for half the year. And then we're just inside for half the year. We don't have many indoor facilities. You don't have a 24-hour gym. You have workout facilities, but I'm talking about like a basketball gym and stuff, like just a lot of weird things like that.
To think about all the people that go to Town and Country Mall or to the mall itself to do nothing but walk.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's dang near a racetrack around the Town
there
and Country inside with people walking.
Yeah, right. I bet if you look close enough, you can start to see some paths worn out in the carpet. I mean,
they probably get annoyed.
But to that point, do we want to pay? Coming back to some of the narratives we heard, do we want to pay for this as a community? Do we want to have these type of facilities, or should we just rely on private business and industry to pay for it? That's the answer that has to be brought forward in June.
Well, I'll fire a shot at the city of Minot. We want private businesses to come forward, and I don't say this because of anything personal. I just say this because you see other businesses that try unique ideas, and they're difficult to be sustainable in Minot because we don't do a good job of supporting the private businesses in those endeavors. We look at other places, and that's where we end up going. And so it's something that maybe the only way that something like this can happen, at least where we're at right now as a community, is through something where the Minot Park steps up or something like that. I think if we had a 24-hour and maybe there's just not a market for it, that's what the entrepreneur side says, is there's just not a market for it. But if you had a 24-hour gym in Minot, I don't think it would last very, very long. I don't think people would use it. And it's interesting.
Not in the scope to make it sustainable.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. There'd be a very small portion.
Yeah.
And if you had a facility like this, I don't know that it would be
cost effective for people to utilize it. We're talking about everybody from the kid who wants to go run on the turf, who's 3 years old, mom needs to get him out of the house because they're driving him crazy, up to the silver sneaker crew.
Right. Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. Silver sneaker.
Well done. Well done. Yeah.
Trying to find somewhere other than the dome or the malls to walk. Yeah.
And if you take a look around the country, there's a lot of these facilities that the only functional way that they are done is through public venture like this with parks or recreation department.
Right. So, absolutely. So that's going to be coming up on June 3rd. That's
Tuesday.
And that's a big week because June 2nd is when the signatures are due for the mayoral candidates.
Yeah. We still got a couple weeks if anyone wants to try to jump in the race. Why not 5?
Why not 5? Yeah. We were talking about that. Like, what's basically the deadline for someone to jump in? I understand that the deadline is June 2nd, but what's the reasonable amount? Probably not the weekend before. We're probably starting to get to the edge of it. If you want to jump in, like right now, it's going to be hard to get 300 signatures.
I'll tell you what, you take a Saturday, Sunday, you could knock out about 300 signatures if you really push yourself.
Right, yeah.
So not that I'm encouraging everybody, but
if you got in by this weekend, you should still have time.
All right, so let's talk about that quickly then. We'll talk about the mayoral race. There's now 4 declared candidates. We got
are acquiring signatures.
Yeah, right. Acting Mayor Mark Janser.
Yep.
Alderman Paul Pittner, Alderman Rob Fuller, and one on the council, Josiah Royce, Minot businessman, Josiah Royce. And so, interesting lineup. First off, it's interesting having 3 from the dice because obviously any of them could have been appointed. If we just went that route, this would be all done. We would have nothing to talk about. But thankfully, they gave us news till August. So we get to go down this road.
And we can't just do things simple on this.
No, gotta make it hard.
Not anymore.
If one of them comes from the dais, are we going to have another special election?
If we have one of them who is elected, and that would be Fuller.
Okay.
Because he's got enough time left on his term that it would make sense to have a special election because it would be a couple of years left on that. So that probably would be the case if it ends up being Janser or Pittner. Probably not an appointment, seeing as we would be less than 10 months then.
Right, yeah.
Probably closer to 7 or 8, and then an appointment to fill that vacant spot.
Now, the appointment will be nice. Obviously, we're starting to run into issues because just last night, and this isn't the first time, Alderman Pittner's like, maybe this is something we should handle with a full dice. This is kind of a big decision.
Yep.
And I believe that was kind of what was decided with the liquor license as well. This is a big decision we're making. Maybe we should make sure that we doesn't fall on a 3-3 vote, that we actually have a full council to make this decision. And so it's kind of a bummer. We should just pause. And I'm not taking a shot. I'm just saying, do we just pause city council until
just call it a day?
We'll pay the bills
anything quasi controversial. We're
just going to table for.
It's going to be a good September.
Yeah, I guess everything's going to come back to the surface.
It's going to be really interesting.
We thought last night's 3-hour meeting was long. We'll just wait until September.
We get a 6-hour one in there. Something going to go till 11.
I was surprised though. Even last night though, there was a couple of votes that. I was surprised that came up. The Ann Street Bridge came off the CIP.
Yeah.
Which finally, I think that was an issue that Ross was touting so much. Yeah, I said his name. When in the 2022 election, and that was
it never happened.
Big comeback, and it's still hanging out. Well, it's not anymore.
Yeah, it's not anymore. It's off the CIP now.
Right. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. I want to talk about that too. But do you anticipate anybody else jumping in, Kyler?
Me? I don't think so at this point.
You don't think so?
I mean, unless...
Can't start getting signatures for you?
I won't campaign nor run for re-election.
Do you anticipate everybody that's declared they're going to run to get the signatures?
Yeah. Everyone's going to get the signatures. I don't have an issue with that.
And when are you starting your polling?
I plan on doing some early polling around the time of that June 2nd election. I'll be out and about doing some stuff.
Sweet. So we'll have
June
some
3rd election.
Unofficial but real data.
Yeah, probably on what would be that Thursday is June 5th?
Yeah.
So there you go. Expect some early polling at that point.
Yeah. So that'll be kind of cool. All right. Ann Street Bridge. What happens? So it sounds like Pittner's like, I just want this on there because I want this to not be forgotten, because I think this is something that maybe future people could think about. So
historical reference is everything. They forgot one of the most important aspects. Nobody seems to remember this. Burlington Northern has said they will never permit that bridge.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So they have said that. When I was mayor, they told that to me.
Yeah.
Padragula tried to call me out on the carpet and saying, well, we haven't heard it from them. Well,
yes, I did.
Yes, we have, as a matter of fact.
Gotcha.
So they can put it on there. They can keep it on there. They could have kept it on there all they want. We could draw how many plans and waste how much more money. But the railroad owns the air above their tracks.
I see.
And if they're not going to permit it, it's a monumental waste of time and energy once again.
Yeah, that
so you're all for this one coming off
Absolutely.
the CIP.
We have wasted enough time and enough meetings.
Trying to find money for it.
Dialing back, and one of our good friends passed away. He was a strong advocate for this thing, but at the end of the day, if it was going to cost $8 million, and at the end of the day, if it was never going to get permitted, how much more? Right. How many more public meetings are we going to waste? How many more schematics are we going to draw up?
How many more applications are they going to put out to no avail? And it's finally to the point where...
Let's just cut the loss and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense.
So what happens with what's left of the bridge there now then?
It's demolished.
Okay.
It's going to be demolished when they come through with the flood control.
Okay.
On the MI4 portion of that, or MI5.
Whichever one it is.
Whichever one
that
within
part of
that
the town.
specific little area.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And speaking of that, there's going to be a big flood town hall meeting at Roosevelt on, what is it?
27th?
Yeah. Coming up a week from today. Excuse me. Yeah, that sounds. They're going to talk about MI 8 and 9, I think. A couple of the future parts that are going to be going through the zoo area there. That'll be a really interesting meeting.
Yeah, that will be interesting.
Yeah.
Any way to accelerate this flood stuff? I know we've talked about that at nauseam. Money.
Lots of
And
money.
the state's talking about cutting it back.
Well, and the other aspect is if we could find another contractor, nothing against the contractors who are working on it, but that lends to, if we do have more competitive bids that come in, and we have another massive construction company that is capable of doing the work as needed, that would help. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the money, we don't have the money.
Right.
The one thing that bothers me the most out of all of this is one of the points that Gettle told me, and I'm not sure if he had mentioned it last night. We reset our dang clock on the completion of our flood project. We're back to 20 years.
Gotcha.
Because of construction inflationary costs.
Wow.
20.
Yeah.
Like
That's crazy.
We could spend an entire show.
Going on the flood process.
Yeah.
Going back, almost 15 years now? 14.
Hey, one of these days we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to do a podcast
the
series on
flood
some of that.
special,
Yeah. Haven't we been talking about that?
We have.
Yeah.
For like a year now.
We could throw that right into the mix, June 26th, if you want to, the day that the crest, or the 22nd when the sirens ring.
Yeah. That'd be a good idea.
What days are those? Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So any other big takeaways from City Council? There's one big takeaway that we're going to talk about. We'll talk about that after the break.
That's flock.
Yeah, that's flock.
I think that's the biggest one that we'll
All right.
go over.
Then let's go to break, and then we'll be back, talk about the flock system.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
Enjoy Minot's finest authentic Mexican cuisine with a view at Mi Mexico. The rooftop patio is open and ready for you to enjoy a margarita or other cool refreshment along with genuine mouth-watering Mexican entrees. Mi Mexico, South Broadway.
We are back to talk
back
about
from the ads.
a flock system.
Yeah, birds.
Yes, that's what
We
the
have a problem with it. No, I'm just kidding.
There's too many pigeons.
Too many geese.
geese.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's geese in the
If we
park.
could, yeah. So they talked about spraying for mosquitoes, and
Actually,
they said that's unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Well,
if,
the EU,
like, what's the good part of the geese and what's the good part of the pigeons? Like the pigeons downtown. Tell me the good things that they do for us.
they probably eat bugs, right?
They probably
Not enough make a difference, I can tell you that. The excrement and the number of pigeons that get hit underneath the 6th Street Bridge.
You always
and
see
the
some down
number
there.
of rooftops that have been damaged.
Yeah.
If we could actually just tell all of the, let's call it the animal lovers of
Yeah.
the world, to turn a blind eye for a
Right.
weekend. We could
Just
have
for a
this taken
weekend.
care of. But
that's the truth.
no, the good thing, I don't know if there is one.
Same with the
And,
turkeys
like,
too.
Yeah.
Dude, there was one that was out in our intersection the other day, just like right out in the middle of it, which is a busy intersection.
Yeah.
But yeah, the golfers aren't fans of geese either.
I bet not.
Those things are scary.
Mm-hmm.
You're golfing at Sears, and there's just a whole flock of them right there, and it's right after they have their babies, man. So they are very uptight, and you're like, my ball's right there.
Quite aggressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very.
Genuinely, if they attack you and you swing at it with your club, do you get in trouble?
If you're in self-defense, no. But if it's provoked by you,
Then yes.
Because
Really?
it is a migratory waterfall.
Fair,
Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha. I
So
see.
yeah, just so long as you can prove it's self-defense, then.
Yeah. Dude,
Start wearing your
body cam.
yeah. Every single time I walk through there, it feels like self-defense. So, all right, that's
Speaking
not
of body
the
cams.
Yes, there we go. The flock system is less about geese, and it's more about the police. That's a terrible transition, but sorry about that. It's more about the police, and they're talking about rolling out a system that would do a better job of tracking cars' license plates, car color, and car types. But at this point, the technology would not be activated to track faces. There would not be any of that.
Yep.
Of course, this has brought a lot of discussion.
Yeah, they would be going off of or being a part of a nationwide database with the flock system, so they can better hopefully identify vehicles that are active in possibly, I know some of the ones that were thrown out there, abductions, or if it's people that are on the run from somewhere else and they could be coming through here.
Yeah.
It goes across the board.
And I think there's been some cases in Minot where it would have been somewhat productive. We are starting to become like this town where we do get a few. There are certain areas that begin to be ran through. So a connection point is Detroit. We've had a lot of connection to Detroit with some crimes that have happened and stuff like that. So there is an area where this could be kind of productive to help run down whether there's been a couple of shootings, things like that it could have helped with.
Here's what the Detroit guys do, segue, but they get rental cars. They rent cars and then they'll like change them out at different locations along the way, and then they end up transferring everything. So by the time
you can't even recognize it.
It's not even the original.
That's actually kind of
a lot of times.
Good point.
It's not even the original vehicle from when they left Detroit with. They'll like change it out in like Minneapolis or something, and then end up here.
So surprisingly, the criminals actually have become aware of these systems and are trying to outplay the systems as well.
At least potentially to a degray.
Yeah, interesting.
When they're not taking Amtrak.
The more convenient travel. So with the flock system, obviously one of the arguments against this kind of goes against people's privacy, and basically the delineation of that is obviously we live in a very unprivate world. So
last 20 years have really changed that. Yeah.
But the problem is the theory is that the citizens of Minot don't want to pay to the city, fund a system like this, where then they are then being tracked themselves. So paying the city to track them. That's kind of the theory behind it. Is this something we talked about? It's evil, but it's necessary evil. Is this one of those things where this is getting to the point of necessary, or is this something that we can avoid as a city? Let's start with you, Kyler.
Oh gosh, so the personal freedom side of me doesn't want to see giving more cameras and more possibilities for anyone to track us. However, I understand the merit behind it. I fully would understand why the police especially would want to go through with something like this. So I guess if they were to put it to a vote, I would personally vote no, but I don't think I would be. There are much worse things that the city of Minot could find to spend their money on than this. I think that's
which is the second part of the equation is the budget for it.
Which there's no guarantee that, and obviously this is getting pushed off again now till the end of summer, but one of the points that Chief Plessis was talking about is there's not a guarantee that this would be able to make the budget for next year. So can we even, it's like a 2-year program, so can we even guarantee we'll be able to budget it out for 2 years?
Right, yeah, and that's a big deal. What's kind of your thoughts on this?
Comes down to a couple of different thoughts. I think I agree with what you said. In an ideal world, I don't want any more privacy shared than is absolutely necessary. I have 7 cameras at my own house for my own security. How many people have Ring cameras? How many other different monitoring devices do people have? I mean, there's a gal at the city council that has her phone up recording every single meeting. Right. The issue of budget, I think that comes back to the question of the citizen satisfaction surveys. Yeah. We spent some dollars on putting out, what we want as a community, and big part of that was police and fire safety, security. This is a good point. So where does that line get drawn?
Yeah.
So maybe because it is such a big issue of privacy, maybe go back to that citizen satisfaction survey and do a sampling and send that out. We've got the technology, I think, to do it.
Right.
And yes, if it is such a big issue and we know it's also going to be a budget priority, maybe spend just a little bit of money and time going out and finding what the citizens themselves want. That's probably the easiest answer for something, I would say, of this magnitude, because this is more than just, do we want to have, some street lights replaced here or some whatever. But this one's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
This one's a social issue.
No, I agree with that. Definitely not a fan of being tracked. And obviously what's incredible is that anything you do, if you are online, I guess, which is assumedly everybody is online, or
if
you
they're
are
watching us, they have to be.
or you leave your house. Yeah. Or you leave your house, you are being tracked.
Yeah.
Like, just take that as it is. So it's interesting, the frustration with this. I think part of it is just there's an opportunity to fight back against this. And so I hear that loud and clear. I don't want to be tracked more than I have to. But I also assume that the police probably have some type, like they have to be aware of some type of thing. So I don't like the idea. I'm not upset about the flock system as is. What I don't like about it, though, is once it's implemented, all the technology is there to do whatever they want, because it's not where you pay for this technology and then you pay for this technology. It's maybe you have to pay a license or upgrade your subscription, but all the technology is already there.
It's already built in.
It's just a matter of activating a switch. Like they said, we have a lot of the technology already in place.
Yeah.
We can't activate it. We have to tell them to activate it. It's already there. And so when I don't like the idea of us getting speeding tickets from cameras, like stuff like that. I think that's too far. I feel like that's something that should be manually done. Stuff like that. And if the technology for that stuff is going to be then implemented essentially, and I feel like that's the part that makes me uncomfortable with it the most.
And there's a big flip side of this whole story too, because what so much of the confusion ended up happening at City Council with was how they were going to vote on everything, because they also have a whole policy that they were going to implement with this as well. And it was a bit of a struggle to get through to vote on the policy separately from the entirety of the action item.
Yeah,
which was tabled.
Yes.
Right, it was.
But the budget,
until we have a full council.
The policy itself was at least tentatively passed. Yes. They passed I guess Alderman Pittner made some amendments to the policy that the police brought forward, and that was passed. So there is a policy that if this were to come to place, would be in place at that point.
Yeah, it was like the amendments were passed to it, but there's probably going to be more amendments. They're fine with those amendments.
Yeah,
though.
odds are more will come to it before September at this point.
Right.
Because there's nothing as of now that the city technically does that would meet the policy. They have the equipment that could meet the technological requirements, but nothing they do now would be under its purview effectively. So it's so much of this is going to see how it plays out come September time. But
sounds like a really good topic for a debate for a mayor.
Yeah, we might have to bring that up. It's going to be
Let's light that fire. Why not?
Let's do it. Yeah.
First audience submitted question.
Yeah. So one thing that, first off, if there's questions you want asked at the debate, he's talking about the June 17th debate at the Miles River River Plate. Yeah, exactly. Appreciate it.
That's a great setup.
There's questions you want asked at that debate. Let us know. This will probably be on the topic list. There's a couple others that we might even go around to certain groups and liquor license is kind of a big deal. So go around to that group and kind of get a consensus and ask some questions based off of those as well. So that way the voice of the people can be heard a little bit through those. You brought up some good points though that kind of get like glossed over here. One is the community satisfaction survey. Obviously, safety is something that was huge and that people are feeling less safe in Minot. So how does that get solved? And then another point that was brought up at council is we have a police department that's down 15 people. That's just the number we go with. It's varying. How do we kind of solve that? And does something like this help with that? And so I think one at a time, community satisfaction survey. Overall, does this meet that, do you feel, or not really?
And it's interesting because you take just the microcosm of last night's city council meeting as the perfect example to that.
Yes.
We had the flock system when we were talking about here's what it can do and here's how it can keep us more safe, but we are worried about our own privacy and safety within that privacy realm, and can that be compromised and used against us? So that in itself is kind of direct headbutting against our own citizen satisfaction surveys and what the people want. Now, it wasn't specific to what the people want in there, but it was more the general idea. Then you have one of the candidates who was also up at the dais at the public comment, railing against the police, saying we shouldn't be doing this and this and this. But watch the video. It's there. Railing against our police department, and our police department is going through a transition period right now. And when you go through difficult transition periods, it's really tough to hire police officers in a department that is showing signs of fracture. And then when you have attacks from the public into that, there has to be an understanding. If you have people attacking our own police, verbally attacking, we're not talking verbally attacking our own police department right now, and officers. Do you think for a moment that we're going to have an ability to hire good officers into our community, or are they going to go somewhere else? They're going to go somewhere else. Last night was kind of the perfect crystal ball or snow globe. Shake it up and see what happens. And I think that maybe is a point where we need to look back. Okay, here's where our priorities are at. Here's how we could possibly meet them. But with something this big, I think you do need to go back to the public.
Somebody said it should go, if it's big, it should go to a literal vote of the people. Like it's going to be, which
There's
is
a
epic.
Pandora's box. Though.
People got to show up.
Any type of issue that is perceived as big, do we need to send it to a public vote?
Yeah.
Or do we rely on our public officials who are supposed to represent us?
Perhaps we get out and vote for our public officials.
Maybe.
Because that's kind of the way
what a novel idea.
What a thought there.
Right, yeah.
I'm excited to see what kind of turnout we have for the June 3rd election. I really think it could be telling for what to expect in August.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they're two completely different kinds of elections, because I feel like the June 3rd one is one that's going to be activated by, I don't want to use the words or the term special interest, but a very, like, obviously it's going to be campaigned very differently.
Motivated group.
A very motivated group, yeah. And you haven't heard a lot of people campaigning against it. Mm-hmm. So there's not like there's people that may not agree with it, but there's not like an actual group that's like, hey, we cannot have this pass. So you have two groups going at it. We don't have that.
There's not that noise.
With the mayoral race, you have 4 people that are actively out there trying to get their people there. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's going to be completely, I don't think the basis of numbers will transfer at all.
That's fair. That's a good take. I get where you're going with that. I just think that it can show how about this? If a lot of people do come out for the June election, I think that will show that a lot of people will come out for the August one.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It shows current engagement in things.
Sadly, I'm nowhere near as optimistic.
No, I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I think it's going to be a horrible turnout. Your numbers alone, the one that you compiled, showing how many people show up to elections, even when they're regularly scheduled.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is sad.
Yeah.
And
it's been bad.
I'm hopeful that maybe a few more people can get up off their butt and go out and cast their vote and do their constitutional duty.
Right.
We shall see.
We talked a lot about the Constitution yesterday, so
there was a lot of
ignited a fire.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk at the city council about that.
Mm-hmm. Thomas Jefferson is rolling the Supreme Court,
something like that. Yeah,
but so one part of that was the satisfaction survey. The other part is the low staffing of the police.
Yeah,
does something like this actually help with that? And I understand we're not part of the police force, but it seems like there's a very unique situation that this is used for. It's not something that's going to be used for every time you're running something down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to actually, I mean, I think it has the potential to help alleviate some very specific problems, but I don't know if it will do a ton to actually help alleviate the general day-to-day issues that they see from low staffing.
Right.
I don't know if there's going to actually be that.
Look at it as more of a tool in the toolbox to hit those higher profile points that otherwise probably wouldn't be caught. One, for either just lack of staff and or just the odd chance of pulling somebody over for speeding.
Right, yeah.
For speeding. Or swerving, whatever. But that's really what it comes down to. Is it a tool in the toolbox that we're ready to, as a community, have?
Yeah.
Or is the, I think, the naivete of privacy.
Right. Yeah.
More important.
Yeah. No. It's a good point.
Yeah.
So
it's the at that stage it's almost the illusion of privacy that you continue to have at that stage. I mean, because I think so much of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Everything we do is at least indirectly tracked at this point.
Or
so
directly.
I mean, at least indirectly, if not largely directly tracked.
Just a small trip down to Bismarck, and then if you've ever been in a big city, there is no privacy anywhere. And the most eye-opening is when I spent quite a bit of time in D.C. I mean, holy cow, there's cameras literally everywhere. Now, we don't want to be D.C., obviously.
No.
But
even when you talk about like the toll roads, like you were tracked the whole way. They're able to go and send you a bill for how much money you owe them.
Forgot to pay at one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Got to get that easy pass.
Yeah. But they're still tracking.
Exactly. No,
they're
exactly.
Still tracking.
That's the thing, though. Even you have that little slide out thing in your front of your windshield, they still are able to track through that.
Right. So there's a lot of tracking that goes on in this world. All right. Let's finish off with this topic right here. And mayoral race is done. We have a new mayor, and it's time. And we're going to appoint.
Who won?
We're not going to, but let's just assume we're going to appoint. Okay? The decision is we're going to appoint.
Okay.
Fair?
For the next city councilman member?
Yes. How is this? So this would assume that. So I guess this is assuming that one person didn't win. So I'm sorry about that. But how does that process go down? Are we going to go and just accept applications and have a special election that's literally going to be appointed by council? You've been a part of something like this before, right? Mm-hmm. So when you guys did it then, how did it happen?
Took applications, go through the merits, basically selected out of the top candidates, or in the case there weren't that many, so everybody got a couple of minutes at the podium. And then the council had to step up and make its decision on who it was going to appoint for a remainder of the period.
Yeah, gotcha.
And yeah, that can be very political, and I can already tell you that there's already going to be maneuvering behind the scenes,
right,
for whichever candidate is going to sit in that seat.
Yeah, right.
Do you expect a lot of applications?
12.
Okay.
Wow.
Fair.
That's a lot.
Only because what I've seen now at some of the city council meetings during the public comment, there seems to be a little bit of the fringe mob mentality that's coming out with their axe to grind, and I think some of those folks would just be as happy to say, you know what, I deserve a spot at the dais, and I have my axe to grind and need to say my piece.
It's a good point, because to be fair, and this isn't casting a stone, but it's a lot easier to submit an application to be a city council person than to run. Yeah. Because running takes time, money, energy, and you're only going to have to serve for 8 months or whatever it is at that point, a very limited time. So you could see a lot of applications. One idea that I have heard floated around is that they would first go to the election results from the last election for city council, with it being halfway through this one, these terms, and take the highest vote getter.
So just start offering it to the next highest vote getters?
Right.
So it was Gietzen? Okay.
Gietzen was the next highest. And then after that, I think it was
Padre. Okay.
What do you think about an approach like that?
I mean, it's a viable approach. They should probably talk to some of those candidates to make sure
that they would be
want
open
to jump
to
into the chaos for 8 months.
Yeah.
And maybe so, because at the end of the day, too, it also could be a good proving ground or testing ground for a candidate who wants to run, because keep in mind, there in 2026 there's 3 seats coming open for city council as well, as well as the mayor position. So it very well could be a testing ground for anybody who is kind of thinking about getting into the chaos and just seeing just how much work it really is.
See if they really want to commit to something like that at that point or not.
Absolutely.
And one point that's overlooked with this, though, is with us tabling these motions or tabling these votes till after the election, till we have a full 7-person council, and with the we'll see how it goes out, but a decent chance that it's going to come by appointment. What kind of politicking is going to go on for that last spot? Because they know it's the deciding vote. Like, we need somebody that's going to vote this way on the liquor license and on this way on the flock system.
How many 3-3 votes do they have over picking a new candidate till they finally decide on someone?
Yeah,
at that point,
it's going to be a really interesting. If it comes by appointment, it's going to be really interesting.
There's a political pact out there that funded the 3
Yep.
And you know that there's going to be a candidate that comes out of the District 5 area in the Southwest Corridor.
Right.
That's 100% a given.
Yeah.
I would say if this council truly wanted to do itself justice, they would find somebody that doesn't have an alliance to any of it and truly, I think has some big picture ideas and experience.
Yeah.
This is not about somebody who has never served in any capacity on any board, who has no clue on what an ordinance is.
Right.
It's finding somebody that doesn't have the alliances anywhere and really just wants to work better for the big picture of the community.
Absolutely.
Now, that's idealism at its worst. It's going to be, like you said, politicking. They're going to try to get one of the like-mindeds in from whichever angle it is, and that's what's probably going to be your 3-3 ties and trying to settle out at whichever candidate can be, I think, tolerated
at this point,
tolerated the most.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be a really interesting process right there.
No, it is.
I think that it doesn't get a lot of attention because of the mayoral race. And it's like, and then they'll just appoint somebody. But that appointing is going to be way more contentious.
Yeah.
And to be fair, if this is all taken back in February, it would not be that big of a deal. But with these tabling of these motions and stuff like that, which I completely understand the reasoning behind it. Yeah. But it is making that seat, like, its stock is going higher than the mayor's spot almost at this point, because they literally are going to be making the decision on the liquor license. They're going to be making the decision on flock. That person is. Yeah. Not the council. That person is making that decision. As of right now,
that's where it's going to. That's how it lies.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Congratulations, 7th random appointed council.
Hope you enjoy that spot.
You get,
right.
That's what's on your plate if you put your application in 6 months from now.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays.
Did you just open up a second can of worms?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the unspoken thing, though. It's one of those.
And could be more votes that get pushed. Yeah. We don't even know yet.
Well, and I'll only throw this out there because when we rolled in 2018, that was the big change for council and things like that. The whole point was to move the community forward in a direction that most people had said that they wanted it to go. And right now, literally, the thing's been shoved into neutral. Not on all things, but on some of the bigger things. So really, is it doing ourselves justice as a community to fight over the like-mindedness? To get what is the direction? What are the priorities?
Yeah.
I think most of the community have set out what our priorities are, and we seem to spend a heck of a lot of time back into the weeds, doing a whole lot of, I'm not going to say nothing, but the
circling the wagons,
the individual priorities, and I think the 3+ hour meeting last night was a perfect example of it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Can't wait till we get those in early September when we get those 5-6 hour meetings coming to the surface.
Yeah, it's a brutal time to join council.
It's going to be right in the heart of the budget process.
It's where it's a month and a half later or whatever, but it's like the normal time. It's not that far off when you normally join. You normally join council and jump into budget. Yeah. Because you normally join in the June. You get elected in June and then you start in July or something like that. The first meeting, however that works.
But with this appointed person, they're missing out on 2 months of that.
They don't have the budget tours that they've gone on.
That everyone goes on prior. So they're going to have to jump into this with. Yeah. If they apply, I would hope that they have some level of background knowledge on how the budget process works, I guess, because you're going to jump in.
Your best bet is almost to take a secondary seat to that, though. Like, you need to be knowledgeable, but don't be leading the charge on it. But
you're going to have to lead the charge with the liquor license.
You're going to have to lead the charge with the tabled measures.
Flock, Yep.
Going back to liquor licenses, I've watched so much of this stuff, and how many people have not done any kind of back look into 2017 when we did this the first time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And between the talk of litigation and the inverse condemnation of property, those two things, it's going to come back to bite them. And if the council itself doesn't do its research, the citizens are going to pay a lot of money.
So they feel like they have a strong opinion, or the alcohol liquor license committee has a strong opinion from an attorney that they won't be sued on this. And I don't think I agree with that, but I'm not an attorney. You guys did research on that.
This came out of the 1930s.
Okay.
That's where all of the control came out of. Fast forward,
post-prohibition era.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people that were the biggest bootleggers were the ones that came out with the liquor licenses back in the day. This is how that's the fast forward now. And the city created real property. And this comes back out of the flood, real property. And if you take away the value of that real property, that is called inverse condemnation. Right. Now, it doesn't matter if that is to zero or to half, but you are taking away real property that the city created. In a court of law, citizens get their butt kicked all day, every day on that one financially. So now, if they have a strong opinion, I would say maybe get a second or third opinion.
Right, yeah.
Some of the communities have done this, or for somebody who has vast experience in property rights.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Even if they aren't, even if they're confident they'll win the lawsuit and litigation, the likelihood of it still happening, I mean, Minot we'd still have to pay for that. It would, even if it goes through and we win, we still are liable for all of the legal fees leading up to that process. So, I mean, however it plays out in that way, if there does go to a litigation point, or on the flip side, we remove the cap and pay everyone out a couple $1 million, and I mean, Minot's having to pay for it regardless in that aspect.
One way or another.
One way or another. And then you get to the question of whether it even needs to be done.
Yeah.
And there's a group of them that don't feel.
And what's the end goal? I think I heard that question. What are we working towards? What is the goal? To run a few of the current ones out of business so we can open up a few others? The city can only sustain so many, but you know, we can't control real business, but we've been the city's been doing it since Prohibition, since before Prohibition.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of semantics here.
Do you feel like alcohol should be treated differently? So because you have the entrepreneur side that comes in, and that side of me is like, yeah, there should be no restrictions on it. But then I'm like, this is alcohol after all, though, and there is a lot of restrictions on alcohol specifically.
There is, not just at the state level, but even at the federal level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you take a look also what the one establishment does require for additional inspections, additional policing, because of the what alcohol atmosphere does bring. We're not naive. It can create problems.
And I'm thankful that we outlaw or have ordinances against having certain types of clubs and stuff like that in Minot. But I mean, if you take off the license, then why in the world do you have a restriction on those things if we're about fair market?
Yeah. Why do the bars close at 2? Why it just keep going at that point?
If that's truly the line of thinking that we're coming from, it's just that one's a Pandora's box as well. Like let's just leave it alone.
My thoughts, if it's an issue, take the 1 in 1,500, drop it to 1 in 1,250.
And raise the cap a little bit.
Caps on there and call it a day.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
That was a good time. Yeah, it was.
Before we start rolling out, any final takes on the legislative session that just wrapped up?
Boy, with some of the issues that are being pushed out, term limits that are going to be coming out for a vote. I mean, there's 100 different ways a person can look at that. I think the property tax thing probably is one of the biggest takeaways on this one. Absolutely, I think it's definitely a good step in the right direction in terms of relief.
It's very relieving.
I don't know if it's the reform that everybody is looking for, but at the end of the day, I don't know if there's a perfect answer that comes out of the legislature.
This is the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes down to if property tax is a priority to you, elect city officials that have that as a priority as well, and then it will solve itself.
In theory,
and that comes back to the issue of, okay, so what is it that you want to pay for your own roads and police and fire? Skin in the game. I agree with Louser and a lot of the other folks. Skin in the game is important. There's certainly a cost threshold that I think a lot of people are aware of. But if we're going to say I want somebody else to pay for all of the things that I need within my community, it's crazy. All of a sudden those demands go into every kind of stratosphere.
It's anything at that point.
This and this. So
it's crazy.
It's a rabbit hole.
It is. Yeah, and you're opening it up and you're asking for everything and anything at that point. Yeah.
Very good. Well, want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in for this part. We are going to go into a second hour today, so it's a special hour, but we're going to go.
I was going to say I wasn't.
Yeah,
no, you're good,
but that's all right. So we're going to go to a quick break, and then after the break, or a little bit after the break, we'll have District 40 Senator Jose Castaneda to talk more about the legislative session. Should be a good time. So enjoy the break.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
Enjoy Minot's finest authentic Mexican cuisine with a view at Mi Mexico. The rooftop patio is open and ready for you to enjoy a margarita or other cool refreshment along with genuine mouth-watering Mexican entrees. Mi Mexico, South Broadway.
All right, so we are going to be going live with Senator Jose Castaneda here in a couple minutes. But before we did, I wanted to talk more about the debate that's going to happen. So this is what's going to happen there. We're going to be releasing some information on that. And part of of that information, we are going to be opening up a form that you're going to be able to submit questions to. So we're going to go and give an opportunity. Now, we can't promise that all these questions are going to be asked or anything like that, but this is going to help us get some of the topics lined out for the debate, so that way we can make sure that we are covering the topics that you want covered. So when we release that, probably later this week, be sure to go to mydakotan.com. We'll just have a tab there for the debate, and you'll be able to go and click, fill out that form, and send us some of the topic ideas that you have. If there's any experience that you want to have part of that, there'll also be an opportunity for you to express that. We're really looking forward to a good time. It's going to be June 17th. Doors open at 6 p.m. There's going to be a social time there where you're going to be able to meet the candidates, eat some food, grab some water or fruit punch or whatever it is that we have, and enjoy that time. And then at 7 p.m. the debate will begin. The debate will be live streamed, but we really encourage you to show up in person. We're going to have a lot of fun things for those that are there in person to help create a really unique experience for everybody. So we're very excited about that. Again, later this week, probably around the Thursday episode time frame, you'll be able to go to mydakotan.com, click on mayoral debate, and you'll be able to fill out that form. So looking forward to that. Also looking forward to our chat with District 40 Senator Jose Castaneda. We're going to go to one last quick break, and then we'll be joined by him.
Enjoy Minot's finest authentic Mexican cuisine with a view at Mi Mexico. The rooftop patio is open and ready for you to enjoy a margarita or other cool refreshment along with genuine mouth-watering Mexican entrees. Mi Mexico, South Broadway.
All right. It's good to have you with us.
That's glad to be back here. Thank you very much for having me, Jonathan.
You tired of Bismarck yet?
I don't say tired of it. It's good. It definitely is 4 months filled with a lot going on. It is mentally draining.
Oh, I'm sure.
People ask me how it was. I don't know if I can compare it to something anyone else has done, but it reminds me of military pilot training.
Okay.
You're going 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. The 2 weeks you're off, you're not really, or the 2 days you're off, you're not really off. You're just back studying, in this case, reading bills, figuring out what you're going to do. And it's just, almost Groundhog Day, but not really. It's just constant. So that's what it reminded me of.
And on Saturdays, you guys had all the legislative forums that you guys were going to. So, I mean, it was taking away so much of that.
Exactly. There's always something going on, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Did you get to, form a favorite restaurant in the Bismarck area or anything like that? Those are things that are important to me.
Right, exactly. Where to go eat, right? We go to Bismarck a lot even prior, so it's a lot of the same restaurants we go to. Yeah. And just whatever seemed closer at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever's most convenient some nights.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure sometimes you're like, okay, I need a good, whatever it is, your favorite meal that brings you just happiness. But a lot of times there's probably a lot of time oriented stuff. Like we just need to get food fast, get back to the room, relax a little bit, and digest everything that we went through today. And I kind of want to start there with our talk today. We're going to talk about the bills that you guys went through and all the fun stuff. Not all the bills, but a lot of the fun stuff.
Maybe one or two.
But this is your first time.
Yes, exactly.
And so like, I want to talk about the experience a little bit. So do you go and rent a house or rent a motel room? What do you do for the entire 4 months?
So the way it works is that you get a stipend. I think it was, I don't know, $2,000 or $2,200, or the reason I remember the amount, it was somewhere in there. You're just kind of like a pastor. It's an up to amount.
Gotcha.
And you can either go rent a hotel or go find someone to rent you the house, rent your room, up to you. But so once you get the lease, that's how much you're gonna get. It's an up
Makes
to.
sense.
So I can't, get $1,500 lease, get the $2,000, and pocket $1,500, $700, whatever it is.
Yep.
It costs what it costs. So I was lucky enough to find a gentleman who had rented previously to the legislator, and they reached out to somebody else, reached out to me. We took a look at the house. Super awesome. So they go to Tucson in the winter.
Okay.
And so I guess it works out that every other year they can rent their house out.
That's
Someone's
cool.
watching it.
Yep.
And so it worked out super nice. I was there, obviously the 4 months. This house is about 5 minutes north of the Capitol.
Oh, perfect.
So it was a perfect, super easy drive. And because it's on the north side of town, coming from Minot was just another
You're already
10 minutes less. Like I could make
huge.
it like maybe an hour 50 or less.
Yeah, right.
And that's not even speeding, right? That's
Right,
just normal. So from that
Because you guys went and increased fines and stuff.
I know, right?
Just hurting
Got
yourself.
to.
Unbelievable,
Gotta be
man.
careful
So,
now.
but we also increased the speed limit too. Although we wouldn't be driving on the interstate to get from Minot to Bismarck, right?
Yeah.
It's a little backwards.
So
there.
from that, of course, that's the beginning. Having a nice place, finding it, and I did find that.
That's neat. That's neat.
a good start.
Gotcha. So you go and you have a full day when you're not staying up till 4 a.m. Full day, and you're able to go and grab something fast, or if you have a house, maybe just go back to the room,
You're
make
able to
some
go
money,
get
and
Costco that way.
Exactly, and that's
Get
also
some
why
good
I
hot
really
dogs.
I wanted a house, because I do enjoy cooking.
Sure.
Gotcha.
And so being going to Costco or just buying a steak, etc.
Yeah.
Something sometimes something that's just nice and you're not spending an arm and a leg
right,
going out
and staying somewhat healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
remotely,
Because
yeah.
you do get, a lot of people say, per diems and stuff. While you're in session, you're just essentially getting your salary, and so there's really no per diem, and so you're getting a salary. But depending on what you do, I mean, if you, to a certain extent, I guess, if you own a company or own something that
Right.
produces income while you're not there, well, then you're getting a little bit of a bonus, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're getting paid for your work, which as it should be. In my case, I do have military retirement coming in, but trust me, it's not enough to pay for the kids and the family.
Right.
Lo and behold.
I do have to have a real job, and so it was let's just say not quite enough to make up for that. Is how much you get. So you do have to be a little bit frugal, because obviously the family back home is still spending money and paying bills. So
Priorities up here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in the long run, it is less expensive. Just go buy some food and cook at home and relax.
Right.
Luckily, I do enjoy cooking.
Yeah, that's good.
And it is a stress reliever for me.
Good. Was your family able to spend a lot of time with you? I'm sure some, but
Yeah, they were obviously my kids still in school. And so if they had a day off, wherever, they'd come down. That was the other nice thing about this house.
Yeah.
It had a couple bedrooms.
That's
so
cool.
family wanted to come and just, stay there.
Yep.
And then come hang out with me, in session. That worked out. My mom and dad were able to come up and enjoy that. So that worked out.
that's really cool.
That's nice.
Very cool. All right. Sounds like a neat experience, neat transition. But obviously, that's not the only thing that you guys did.
No,
So,
of course not. Yeah, and then in session, I mean, as a new guy going in, I don't
are
even
you
know
worried
where to
about term
start.
limits?
No, you know what? I have a love-hate relationship with term limits. I do. I'm like on the fence. I'll give you my 2 cents about term limits. There's a big part of me, probably, I don't know, 50, 60%, just more than half, that doesn't believe that term limits do happen at the polls.
Yeah.
If you as a citizen like the person that's representing you,
Yeah.
and then one day artificially you're told Yeah. I know you love that person. They did a great job for you. You thought that they represented your ideals, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you, now you can't vote for them.
Yeah.
You just can't anymore.
They're off the ballot. Yep.
That's that's a tough one to swallow, right? Yep. On the other hand, there's a lot of power that comes with incumbency when it comes to being reelected.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So are you artificially holding other people off that would be good competition because they don't have that power of incumbency?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where term limits can come in. If you take a look at the average amount of time that senators and representatives stayed in, I want to say the number was, I forget what the exact number was, but it was between 8 and 10 years right now.
Sure.
So even with that term limits, that was the average turnover.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, that being said, though, it doesn't mean that there are some people that might be in there way longer than 8 or 10 years. But then again, if people like them, they're there. There's some things that maybe you'd like to change in the House or Senate, and I'll bring one of those up here when we get to it. Just remind me a big thing that from day one I was not happy about at all.
Sure.
And so when you have some people have been there a long time, it's tougher to make changes. Because I don't say necessarily people are necessarily entrenched, but I think as humans, change is difficult.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you get all excited, I'll come with you in a new house, but then when it starts to happen, you're like, oh my goodness, right? Or a new job, super excited about a new job, and now it's about to happen, and you're like, oh my goodness, right? I think
nerves
change
hit.
is tough, and I think that's just how it goes. Pros and cons. If I could be king for a day, and I think term limits, I think you know what we could do, and I think some states may have this, a cooling off period. Say you want 8 years, then maybe you say you can't participate for 4, maybe another 8.
You have to take a cycle off.
Yeah, a cycle off, because then what would happen is you now have a new person who's now an incumbent too, and if you want to come back and you think you have something good to add, now it's almost like you have 2 incumbents vying against each other.
Yep.
Maybe they both have power incumbency.
Yeah.
If you wait too long, maybe you forget about them. But nevertheless, I think that there's goodness in both. I can really see goodness in both. And so it's a tough one for me of
That's fair.
of where we're at. The only thing that I did not like about the way our term limits constitutional amendment was put in was that I think some people argue it wasn't vague, that it meant what it meant. Some don't. I don't know, but it's tough to say. How about the people that were already in when it came? Do they get 8 more years from there, or some people it's 6? How about when someone comes in now halfway through?
Where do they
Because of
start?
any reason now do you only get 6 instead of a full 8? If you look at the way the term limit language is written for the President of the United States in the U.S. Constitution, a little longer, but very, very clear. There's no doubt. You
It's very
serve at least half
specific.
the term, then it's considered full term, less than half, et cetera. We could have picked whatever.
Yep.
This is going to start in whatever. So I think that that could have helped a little bit. I think a lot of the issues you're seeing back and forth now with the legislature is not so much trying to take it away, but more along the lines of maybe some things that weren't exactly clear.
For the existing legislators, I don't have much, like, as with the term limits perspective, I don't have much feeling there. I feel like it was intended that whether you ended up serving 6 years under that or 8 years, however that worked out for you, it was intended that once you reached that, you were done. But the part that I think is really unfair about it is what you mentioned. It happened in your district. It happened in District 40. One of the legislators passed away, and they had to appoint someone. I believe it was your district.
It was a while back. They've also had to do other district. It was, and we appointed Claire Sue.
Yep. And now that goes against her terms.
It does. Now she served previously, so was somebody that if anything were to happen, she can go ground running, get going.
Yep.
But she also definitely expresses she had no true interest of wanting to go back. She'd been there, done that.
Right.
She doesn't want to run herself.
And so that is also why we chose her, because had we chosen anyone else who down the line goes, wait a second, this is kind of interesting. I'd love to be part of this.
Right.
Just the last 4, 5, 6 months worth?
Yeah.
And now
that
took a term, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's the part that's the worst about it is like, it's just totally, you have to find people that I don't ever want this position, so I guess you can appoint me as that. Like, okay, well, we almost, like in that case, it worked great because Claire Sue had experience and all that. But in other cases, that could be terrible because you just have people that don't really want the job. They're just a placeholder in it,
Like and it's how long, and maybe the decision can be made at the district level where you say, well, if you're going to serve, it depends where, because it depends when you appoint them. What if it's the last? It happens in, like, heaven forbid, you don't want anyone to pass away or have to resign. But if it does, and
but that happened this session. It happened right in the middle of session. Someone passes away, and their spot has to be filled, and it has to be filled by somebody that's willing to commit a bunch of time right there on the spot, and that probably, if you're going to commit that much time, you probably have an interest to the point of maybe running wasn't out of the question in your life.
Exactly, and so where was it for the person to go over? I think I don't remember if it was. It was a Josh Christie's seat, and was it odd or even district? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
So they might be coming in where, boom, they're essentially going to get the whole term, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe that works out. But if this
or on the
is
flip
only,
side.
On the flip side, if this is the one, well, you could. I know we serve
District 27.
27. So it was an odd district. So that means that
they'll be.
So it was only this session, and the next one's got to come up for re-election. So. The argument could be they served half. I mean, if you serve one of the two sessions, even though it's only towards the end, that's roughly about, half. So, maybe from that perspective, districts can choose someone if they are going to serve a full, like an actual, during a session.
From the closer to the start of the session.
You would be, you're roughly serving half a term. And like I said, if we want to compare it to anything that already exists in the U.S., which is, presidential term limits, very specifically says you serve half, it'll count as the whole thing. Less than half, it won't.
Right, yeah. Yeah. No, I think that amendment is something I'd get behind.
Yeah, 100% on that one. I can't argue that at all. And I do like the clarity that it has, especially with the presidential side of it. I mean, you look at the state stuff, and it has been vague. I mean, I think that's why it's coming back next fall now, and we'll have a chance to vote on it again.
Yeah, it's not why it's coming back next fall.
Well, why is it?
Well, because the next fall is not clarifying that part.
No, that's true.
Next fall is going and combining the two sides together so that you get to serve 16 years across both.
That's fair.
Obviously, you whether you voted for or against that, you were involved in that vote. How do you feel about that? Is that, do you feel like that's still the intent that the people wanted?
I think it would be, because at the end of the day, you can do 8 years in one chamber, 8 years in the other, and you can still have the same effect. So to me, it is, if there's some intent that when it was crafted, when the amendment was crafted and put into play, if there was a big intent of saying we want to limit 8 one, 8 the other, and here's the reason why, which, I mean, if there is one, I don't know it, whether it's due to my ignorance or the fact that it was just never brought up.
No, that's fair.
Right.
I suppose there could be an argument for that. Big picture, though, I mean, if you're in the Senate or the House for 4 sessions, well, it'd be 8 sessions, but I guess 4 terms.
Yeah.
I guess
how much does it really?
How much does it matter? Yeah, I don't know, because if you have a running mate, you're gonna be like, am I gonna run against the other running mate? Do you then have to get out, and maybe that's that cooling off period? You come back and do it in a different once they get out. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's
especially if you are running as a cohesive unit, as 2 representatives together, and maybe there's an offsetting kind of year there with them, and it can bring up some questionable things at a point. Yeah,
and it definitely can. So I think that from that perspective, I think it's minor. Now, if there's somebody who thought, no, there's a reason we did this, and that is what we meant. Then sure, vote against it. I think, though, that there are plenty of people that are going to run 8 years in one chamber, 8 in the other, and
call it a day at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you see yourself doing this for another 15 years at that point?
I think I heard something at the beginning. They say at the end of every session, everyone says, "I'm not doing this
I'm
again,"
done.
Right? and I understand why. So of course, I'm the beginning of my term, so I'll get one more session. And so I think people ask, "You're going to run again?" And I think the real question is not at the end of this session, but the end of the next one.
Yeah,
that's the better determining.
Did you enjoy this?
I did.
Yeah,
I really did. I've always been, I guess, a political junkie, if you want to put it that way. So I do enjoy it. I always enjoyed being able to participate in the process more. And it has been very interesting, and I'd like to think that even first session I was able to put a little bit of a, everyone likes to leave a little bit of their stamp on there. Something that I think is North Dakota better off because of me today? And I think that, I always ask myself this question when I was in the Air Force. At the end of the day, is the Air Force better off because of what I did today or not? And I'd like to say that there were days when I was very excited. I say, you know what? I did this thing today, and the Air Force is much better off because of it. But let's be honest, that didn't happen very often because, if you're making that big of an impact, like, wow.
You're pretty high. Yeah, you're doing something good. Yeah.
Most days it was like, you know what, broke even. I kept the status quo. I kept it moving along. You
didn't sink the boat.
Exactly. If you do nothing,
the airplane.
Things kind of get worse, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Right. But if you do, you got to do some work to keep it running, like anything in life.
Right.
So most of the times you do work, but all that did was help maintain the status quo. There's days when you kind of screw up and you're like, well, I think the Air Force is worse off today because I made a mistake.
Yeah. Whoops.
So I say 7% of the days is the status quo. Maybe hopefully maybe like close to 3% is you made it better, and a very small amount you're like, oh, I
might have messed one or two things.
And I think to a certain extent the same works.
You mentioned there was something that you wanted to change right out of the gate.
Oh yeah. So I was in org session in December, or right before that, and I was texting back and forth with somebody, and they talked about agency bills, and I'm like, what are these agency bills? Well, what are they? And they said, agencies like executive branch agencies can propose legislation.
Okay.
And I thought they were messing with me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way. And sure enough, it's a thing.
And they have them all lined up, ready to go at the start of the session?
I cannot wrap my head around it. It is, my joke is I walked over to the governor's office and I asked where the sign-up was for legislators sign up for governor for a day.
Okay.
They don't seem to have that sign-up.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Right, yeah.
Being able to propose legislation is very uniquely should be a...
representatives. An
elected legislator. That's what you get to do. When you start having the executive branch legislate, and people will be like, oh, well, they're just introducing it. Well, that's a very first and very important step to it.
That's how it all starts. And especially North Dakota.
Exactly.
Everything gets voted on.
It actually happened. Exactly. Because everything is going to see a vote. It's going to be on the floor. That is huge, huge, huge. So I thought of a lot of different ways to, undo this. And the thing that struck me was I dug into it and I'm looking, is this something that's allowed per our Constitution? No, it's not. Nowhere in there, one way or another. Century Code? No. It is in Senate and House rules. It is our own rules that we could change. So I was a little late on the rule change because by the time the rules get approved, you can change them on the floor. I guess I could have done that. But
being the first time in the session.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I asked around and I said, okay, so what's going on with this? They said, well, every year someone tries to get rid of it, et cetera. And so I dug into it and I found out, okay, these agency bills, what's the point? What are they doing, et cetera? A lot of them are truly cleanup bills.
Okay.
And so I have definitely I saw goodness in that. So it was a late bill that I put in after I looked into it. The agency whose portion of code they're dealing with every day, they see errors, they see a change that needs to be made administratively because this isn't working. And so it really is an administrative change, an administrative correction. And if they find it and they want to write it up and just basically turn it in, sure. You know what? 99.9% of those bills get passed, unanimously, pass out of committee, and almost unanimously.
Worst case, gets one or two dissenting votes.
Exactly, out of both houses. There's a reason for that. It's not changing policy. It's just like, wow, good catches. Let's, make our government better. Let's align it with
more efficiency.
This thing. Or guess what? We originally wrote it like this because federal law said this. Federal law changed. We now need to change the word to match federal law. Things that are like, oh, okay, it's not going to change much, but it'll help us do our stuff better. Then there's other ones where truly there's policy changes.
Okay.
And that's where I found, because there's a lot of bills that have been put out over the years, especially, I guess, not this last session, one before that, didn't pass because it just killed everything. It says no more agency bills. We can't even make a Senate or House rule about it. None of it.
Okay.
I said, well, let's find a middle ground. So what my bill proposed, and it didn't pass out of the I got, I think, 18 or 19 votes in the Senate. So about just a few short there, about probably 6 short. But who knows? Maybe next
Enough.
session.
I was gonna say enough.
Got a couple people afterwards said, "Oh, now I understand, and maybe I should have voted yes." I was like, "Oh my goodness." So who knows? Maybe next session. But what this bill proposed was the following: all agency bills have to be due the 1st of November.
Gotcha.
And then from November 1st until
start a session.
Until Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay,
right?
fair.
Legislative management would get together and look at all these bills and essentially make 2 piles. Have policy change or just truly cleanup bills. And if someone's disagreeing, well, there's 15, 16 people in legislative management, 17, whatever the number is, and have a vote in whichever way it goes, right?
Yep.
So now you got 2 piles. And the reason you do it before Thanksgiving, everyone can go home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
work,
do the holidays.
Whatever, maybe it's a 2-day process, I'm not sure. And now the ones that are truly cleanup bills, they're also really good because when you get into your first and second day of actually gaveling in, you actually have something to start voting on. Because you're not having to waste 1 or 2 legislative days, which I guess at that point, maybe you wouldn't waste them, you just wouldn't gavel in if you don't have any bills to look at because they just haven't come out of committee yet. You need to give the machine a little bit of time for them to start coming out of committee, right? But then, I guess the beauty of my plan, because it is my plan, so therefore beautiful, right?
The Castaneda plan.
Exactly, is now that you've got this pile of bills that are like, no, this has some policy change. So now, like you said, org session comes up beginning of December.
Sure, okay.
So now 141 legislators are going to be there. You go say, hey, I've got these bills that I think would be really good ideas. And now it's up to the legislators to decide if you want to take them. Now, I'm going to make up a number. Let's say, maybe it's a big number. Let's just say 15 bills is the most bills you want to carry. You're like, dude, I can't carry more than 15. It's just, I can't.
There's only so much you can do to yourself at that point.
And somebody comes up to you and, Secretary of you name it comes up, Attorney General, whatever, and says, okay, here's a bill. You look at it and you're like, oh, this is a great idea. I'll take it and I'll push it to 16, or you'll take your bottom one and be like, yeah, maybe there's a freshman that wants to take this.
It's all done for you. Yeah,
exactly, or somebody else. Or you look at it and you're just like, well, it's not a bad idea, but it's just I like my 15 better.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So my argument is, because they say, well, what if they don't find anybody? Well, if out of 141 legislators, all of them are like, I actually like my 15 better, and I don't have the bandwidth to take anymore.
You can't convince,
Then maybe it's a policy idea that if you can't find one person to even carry the water on, but now from the way we have the rule right now, it's actually going to get forced onto you in committee.
Yeah, you're going to take it no matter what right now.
Exactly. And so to me, that right there would be the middle ground. And I think that would then balance out the goodness of it with being able to stop, as much as we hate people, the saying, legislating from the bench, from the judicial branch.
For sure.
I think we legislate from the
executives. Yeah.
So basically, you need somebody in the legislature to sponsor the government bill. Essentially, I understand that there's a process that it goes through, but essentially, that's what it comes down to.
Well,
not sponsor, but carry it. Yeah.
Carry. Well, yeah. I mean, and I say the governorship, and I should really mean the executive branch. Because obviously, North Dakota is very unique that we actually have, all the people that would normally be appointed by a governor, usually in other states, we elect them, right? Statewide. So, it could be anything. You can't, necessarily blame it on whoever the governor is at the time.
There'd be the secretary.
You're just trying to avoid not getting called to his office.
No, exactly. And I'm just saying that, it's a unique thing that, that not a lot of people just understand. So for anyone watching, I want to point that out. But so, because right now when you look at a bill, at the very top, it says, who sponsored it. And for the agency bills, there is none. And because they just introduce it and it just shows up in your
comes from them.
Right.
And the person that shows up is, whomever, and you're just like, where's this coming from? So I guess it just comes down to, I believe that introducing legislation that is going to have a policy change, which means that there's going to be a real and true effect to the residents of North Dakota if this thing passes, should only be allowed to happen through legislators, because that is what and I say us, right?
Yes. What you were
elected people to do. Right? I elected a legislator to legislate. I elected the governor to govern. I elected a judge to be a Supreme Court judge. I elected Secretary of State to be Secretary of State, right? Exactly. And so if, going back kind of my joke, because I use the governorship as an example, but can I go to the Secretary of State or to the Attorney General or to the commission? You name them all, and be like, oh, where's the sign up for me to do this for a day?
Yeah. Right.
Can I want to swap for a day?
Well, yeah, and if you get them to do one of your bills, you don't have to have a name attached to it, and sometimes that makes unique questions on the floor. But also it could make it where it feels like, oh, we need to do this because it's for the governor's office or it's for the executive branch. So there's more of a priority on it.
An example of one that came through was the wanting to put license plate readers. That bill didn't pass because you can see pros and cons license plate readers.
Yeah. Yep.
You have them all of a sudden. You're looking for someone. Hey, this person's license plate abducted someone. They're reading everything, and the big machine in the cloud figures it out, and boom, there's a person you're looking for. On the other hand, you could arguably say there's a certain invasion of privacy when
that's what City of Minot's saying.
Yeah.
Exactly where you are everywhere, right? And so my point with this bill was that the passage of this bill, right here, just the three of us, we can see the pros and cons.
Yep.
This is something that is significant policy change.
Yeah.
Because it's significant policy change, it should have to be championed by a legislator.
Yeah.
Not
makes sense.
You don't just get to bring it, because if not, how about you just get to introduce legislation?
Yeah, why can't anyone at that point? Yeah.
You can come find me, your senator representative, and be like, and it does happen.
Yeah.
Hey, I wrote this legislation because someone brought this issue to me, etc. But I had to put my name on it.
Yeah,
right.
Because you have to be the one
and
that
you had to
sponsors
go.
it.
You had to go and stand before a committee and explain it too.
Exactly.
And every once in a while, you'll find one of the legislators. Well, I'm sorry, I put this together for somebody in my district.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's so you can tell a little bit of passion about that. It will definitely be coming back next.
You got
session.
some support?
I do. I had. Like I said, I got
awesome.
18 votes. I got about 3 or 4 other people who after the fact said, you know what, I think I understand this better. If I could vote for it again, I would. So let's assume. So that puts me up to like 22.
Sure.
At least that's the Senate. You need 24, right? So I think that it's a new and novel idea. In the past, it always been no more agency bills, and I think the way we do things in North Dakota are sometimes unique. But I see that, like I said, the goodness in agency bills are truly cleanup bills, and I really do believe that when this was put in place, was meant only for that.
Sure.
So I really do think that it has, unfortunately, expanded into policy, and that's where I want to draw the line.
Yeah, that's where that line needs to come into play at that stage.
And I think legislative management could be the perfect committee the month before session
starts,
or at least org session.
Sure. Yeah.
Just say, okay, here, take these back. Come the 1st of December, and
at some point in between the election and Thanksgiving, get together for 2-3 days and get it hammered out.
Exactly.
One of the governor-sponsored bills or legislative-sponsored bills one of the bills from the governor's office that was sponsored by a legislator was the property tax bill.
Yes,
1176.
Yeah, that's an example of that happened this year. I kid, but let's talk about property taxes. You guys, do you feel like you passed property tax reform or relief?
Relief, because I think the reform portion of it a little bit comes from where the money's coming from.
Okay.
Right? So that's unique, because if you go back and you think about why did we begin the legacy fund? And I would argue it's because, we wanted to leave a legacy at some point.
Yeah.
We're going to no longer pull out oil. I don't know, whatever happens, right? You're no longer going to have that. So, and we're obviously making, as a state, a lot of money, and we're converting. I don't say making a lot of money. We're converting our natural resource
into money,
into dollars, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's just really converting it, and so turning into more liquid asset that can directly buy you things. But how do we have this? This has been a forever. Obviously, for anybody, obviously may not know it pretty clear, how do we leave this in perpetuity for everyone else?
Yep.
So a portion of that money has been obviously put in a fund to create, interest and be able to live off of that.
Mm-hmm.
How awesome would it be if one day this fund was super huge,
right?
And the interest from it could effectively pay for government, right?
Yeah.
Well, and
great,
done, right? Exactly. So taking that money and using it against being able to have to pay your taxes, I think to a certain extent is exactly what it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. So is that relief? Yes. Now, if we stick with it and keep moving forward and use that portion of money for that, then it really truly would be reform. Because let's be honest, government has to run. Something that I'm working a little bit with the tax department here in the off session is I have a question. How much does it cost to run North Dakota? And I'll get back to the taxes with that. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I mean add up the budget of every city,
I see,
every county, every township, and obviously the state. This is how much it costs to run North Dakota. That money's coming from somewhere, right? Mostly our taxes.
Yeah, that's an interesting number.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what does it truly take to run it? Because an interesting mental exercise that I thought about was, well, we're turning around and saying, we're going to pay this portion of cities. I mean, we think of it property tax, but let's think a bigger picture. We're paying this portion of the city's budget for you.
Sure.
And by we, I mean the state.
The state, yeah.
But it's really through the legacy fund. Right? We're offsetting it, and we're not necessarily you're paying for the cities, but the whole goal is that you're offsetting it so the individual citizens have to pay it.
Yep.
You know, we're starting to take advantage of these earnings from the legacy fund. Okay, well, wonderful. Would we be able to do that like to the nth degree? Because what if, and I have, local control, so, people don't necessarily, I get 120 emails. I'm not
flip
saying
side of it.
There's no local control. This is just a mental exercise of how you take
what it would take.
Degree.
Yeah.
Let's just say that number is $40 or $50 billion.
Sure.
Whatever it might turn out to be.
Yeah.
So let's say $50 billion. So what if you said cities, counties, townships cannot levy taxes? Period. And I'm talking school boards, everything.
Nothing.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The only entity, governmental entity, state of North Dakota that can levy taxes is the state. And the state, through any sort of taxes, taxes from the people, you've got your oil revenues, you've got matching funds you get from the federal government, come up with that amount of money, and then say you were to dole it out and be like, you get what you get, right?
And everyone gets a piece of the pie.
Obviously, those formulas would be extremely complex, and now, you lost local control because you're getting told what to do. But I don't necessarily need to take away local control. It's more of
what it would take.
So now you only have one revenue, and because I think the issue with property taxes, I've said all along, the way people are upset is because, well, no one likes to pay taxes in the first place, and I get that.
Right. But
you have to, right? Things don't run themselves. But the reality is that if you find yourself, I pay this type of tax and this type of tax and then this and this and this, maybe you feel like you're, death by 1,000 cuts. And I think one of the issues with property taxes is that property taxes are based upon a value of your house that keep going up. And it's also based upon a percentage that you put against it, right? Yep. We measure it in mils because if we did 1%, that'd be huge.
Just gets thrown off there.
So it's tenths of a percent that we discuss it in. And then the third thing is that this is a tax that is paid in perpetuity. So those are three things that I think get people property tax, where they feel, they lowered the mills, but the value of my house went up. And I say that in air quotes because, what is something valued? It's valued the second it is sold. Until you sell it, you can say, well, you could possibly sell your house for $400,000. Well,
if someone's going to offer,
until it gets offered, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I see the people have the angst with the property tax. I mean, you buy your sweatshirt here.
Yep.
You paid sales tax on it. And you keep paying tax on it. I mean, we used to have this tax in North Dakota in the past. But this perpetual tax, the question comes, do you really own your property?
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of reasons there's angst with the property tax itself.
Right.
One of the things, could we go to, there's pros and cons too. Could we go to square footage?
Yeah.
Because now it's a number, unless you're going to grow your house, it's X amount of square feet. It doesn't change. Maybe Fargo charges $1 per square foot. Maybe Bismarck charges $1.20. Maybe Minot charges 80 cents. I don't know.
However they work it out.
But now it's a set number, right? I mean, we can argue that all day, but going back to the whole purpose is, if I were to drastically change how property tax is charged, is that now what people are considering reform versus just relief, right? So I would say it was more just relief, because you're saying you no longer have to pay this much. It's going to come out of this fund we've been saving on for a while, so it gives you relief. But the last thing we want to do is for it to then go up again, because now you're back where you started.
Yeah. And you're just playing, going in circles.
So now you get the caps. They put the 2-3% cap you talked about.
Yep.
A lot of people were against it, and I get it because you're capping me how much I can grow. And what happens to a small township that all of a sudden needs to buy a new fire truck? That year they buy the fire truck.
Right.
Right.
Just blows the budget.
It blows the budget. And now it'd be crazy for every, subdivision, political sub, to not say, yep, I'm going to max out to the full 3% every year.
Yeah.
Why would you not? Right.
You guys guaranteed growth.
Right. Exactly. And so, there's a lot of things flip side to chew on, and I don't bring more questions than answers here, but it is a tough thing. So, I think so at the end of the day, it's in the eye of the beholder. What is reform? Getting rid of property tax? But you get rid of property tax, going back to what I was saying earlier about it's coming from somewhere. What other tax are you going to raise?
That's the
Would
thing.
you rather have income tax? Should we raise the state income tax again and completely get rid of property tax and then give that money to the cities? Should we get rid of property tax altogether? And now cities are charging 15, 16, 17%
sales tax. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
where do you find that balance at that point?
At what point, is it, quote, fair? And I think the fairness comes into, and the reason property gets so attacked, going back to three things, it's based on a value that people might see arbitrarily gets changed.
Yep.
And something that I'm like, can I ever not pay it?
Yeah.
So
would you then, just without specifics on it, would you be in favor of figuring out a way to change how the valuation system works?
Oh, I definitely would be, and I really think square footage is a way to go. There are some things you'd have to look at and take into account because, for example, right now, if I can have a, 2,500 square foot house, two 2,500 square foot houses, and they're in very completely different parts of the city.
Yep.
One 2,500 square foot house could be worth $400,000. Another one could be worth $100,000.
Exactly.
If these two houses are now charged the exact same amount, it becomes tough because you could make the argument that the person who lives in a $400,000 house makes a heck of a lot more money than the person who lives in a $100,000 house, even though it's the same size per square foot. Right? And so that is the first thing that all starts bringing another argument for, well, it's not fair, right? Because there's a lot of things in life that aren't fair, and you move from one system, which I explained the unfairness portion of it, to another one where now you bring up other things that are
whatever else.
There.
Yeah,
another
it's a
way
trade-off.
you could do it with square footage is kind of like do it. Say, okay, maybe the first 2,000 square feet are exempt. Maybe if you make you can exempt the first X number of square feet depending on how much you make. If you make $100,000 or less, I'll exempt the first 1,000 square feet.
Yep.
If you make more than $100,000, you only exempt the first 500 square feet, etc. Sure. And then what you can do is people get older because you get to a point where you're done paying off your mortgage and you think, dude, my house is paid for.
Yeah.
I'm retiring, whatever. Maybe you get a point when you turn 55, 60, 65, you can exempt the first 3,000 square feet regardless of what your income is.
Yep.
That means you're only paying on a little bit. And what you can also do, maybe make it like income tax. You exempt the first number for whatever reasons you want. Then after you've done exempting it, maybe the next 1,000 you only pay $1 per square foot.
Sure.
Maybe the next 1,000 after that it's $2 per square foot.
It's a tier bracket kind of thing.
Graduated thing.
Yeah.
And so you bigger house, okay, you're gonna pay more, but maybe you can actually exclude the first little bit, and that would bring back the quote unfairness of a house, and that's worth $100,000 versus another one, same square foot,
same size, but one's worth twice the value.
And I'm talking only primary residential.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else is going to be some sort of income producing property.
Yeah.
And so primary residential, for the rest of it, could stay the same for, kind of all that matters. You do bring in the farmers though, so that's
a whole nother
thing. So I kind of divide it into, there's three kind of groups. There's primary residence, residential, then there's commercial, and then there's
ag,
right?
Yep.
It really is. So you treat those differently. But anyway, if you were to change that, then maybe people would perceive a little bit more of a fairness, and then it wouldn't feel as
skewed or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the pushback is for it.
I think that's a great point, especially because you see so much upset stances from the mills that you'll have the city that reduces the mills, and so you expect your property taxes to go down, but now everyone's home valuation goes up for the year, and so you see maybe an incremental at best change in your value, and that's actually a really good way to possibly, I really like that tiered system to try to maybe work a way into finding how it could be a little more equitable around the board.
Exactly. And then yeah, you turn 65, the first, I don't know, 3,000. So if you really want to pay taxes, I mean, go trade in your big house for 3,000.
Small house. Yeah.
And if you got, good on you, you made tons of money, you have tons of income coming in retirement, well, you can afford the tax on the big one. You still get your first 3,000 as a
across the board.
Exactly, because now you're in retirement, etc. And you go from there. So there's tons of ideas, but I really, obviously we've increased it from the 500 up. It'll be effective, for next year.
Yeah, and that'll make a difference.
People will have to sign up the exact same way as they did before. You got to go online. I think we probably do possibly we want to start going this direction where we actually want to use the legacy fund to turn around and give money back like we do with like Alaska does with oil revenues.
Yep.
And we're essentially kind of be doing the same thing. I do think we probably need to change the Constitution so that we are then allowed to
dole it out at that point.
And just be like, here it is, versus having to sign up for it and whatnot. That's the direction we want to go.
But the state voted against that direction before. Of course, obviously things can change.
Yeah.
Question. I want to talk about education savings accounts, but before we jump into that, because we got 20 minutes left, property taxes is a big topic. Is there what's some of the things that you were excited you were able to get done? Whether that was something that you introduced or just something that passed that you were excited that came out of the session?
Well, it's something I introduced, and I would have never thought I would have. I ended up introducing a bill to allow dentists of all people. I started looking into dental insurance, and dental insurance is a tough one. It's
never enough.
It is. If you look at the amount of money that dental insurance pays for a procedure, in the past 10 or 15 years, that number has not gone up.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. It's so
as dental costs are still
exactly right. And so it's like, okay, we'll pay $500 for a crown. That may have gotten your crown before.
Crown, used to cost $750. Now it costs $1,750.
Exactly, and you're still getting the same amount. And so there's a lot of dental bills that came out, but one I worked with, but one specifically I sponsored is that you have two big insurance companies in the state of North Dakota that cover just over 90% of the dental insurance space.
Okay.
Right. The largest company, or I should say dental practice, is just over 2%. I think maybe 2.5% of it. So there's obviously, it's a disparity.
Sure, yeah.
If dental companies, dental practices get together, prior to this bill, were to get together to try to now say, well, we're a bigger powerhouse. Let me talk to XYZ Dental Insurance because they're passing some things to me that I don't necessarily like. Part of it would be what you get paid for, but this was excluded from this bill, and I'll get to it in a second. But sometimes it was like, how are you going to get paid?
Sure.
You're going to get paid with this virtual credit card, and you're just like, and that's it, take it or leave it. And you're just like, well, if I want to take this insurance, I'm going to be a network for this insurance, then I have no choice to go by the rules. And why would you as a dental provider want to be a network, in my opinion, with the majority of dental insurances if you could? Well, because you have customers. At the end of the day, the dentists want to be able to take care of their patients.
Yeah.
Right? And if you come in and you're like, well, I have this insurance, be like, well, not a network for it.
Right. Sorry,
right? I'm not saying that they're necessarily, I'm not, at the end of the day, this is not necessarily because, I need, dentists to make, 3 times more. Or, the joke was, I'll pass this legislation once they start working on Fridays. I heard that when I was moving my bill around, right? Whipping my bill, as they would say. But the deal is, at the end of the day, it needs to benefit the consumer.
Yeah.
And the consumer benefits when you have more dentists that take more insurance.
Yeah.
And the reason they're not taking them is because there's something about the contract that is just not working for them. And so at the end of the day, the consumer is the one who ultimately loses.
Yep.
Right.
So what this bill is going to allow to do is now they can get together. Before, dental companies, like I said, dental practices, if they got together, they were breaking like federal antitrust laws. So there's a Supreme Court case out there that said, no, because the federal government has not put any laws in place for this, if the states can govern how they're going to get together under a very specific set of rules with state oversight, they can get together and they can work with the insurance companies.
Sure.
And so we actually got the bill passed. And so it excludes how much they're going to get paid for services for now, but forms of payment, different details that you would never imagine is what's keeping them from joining. They can get together, and they can come to to the table. Now it's purely voluntary. So if
they want to keep it how it is, they don't have to jump in.
They don't have to do anything. So if X number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, every dentist in town wants to get together, form a little group, get someone to represent them, and say, hey, XYZ dental insurance. Let's come to the table. Let's discuss this. And they're both parties willing to come to the table and come to an agreement. Now they can do that.
Okay.
It doesn't force anybody, but before, just the ability to be able to say, let's come together and let's talk about this, in aggregate, was completely illegal. You go to jail for antitrust.
This opens up the door.
This opens up the door to say, if you'd really like to discuss that, was it being taken advantage of? Will the dentist not want to do it? Will the dental insurance not want to do it? I don't know. But that was a tough one. You think it's small. Something else that, for next session, going to this direction that is frustrating to me. I'll talk about one more. Dental payout ratio.
Okay.
For medical, it's about 70%. That means for every dollar that you pay in, 70 cents of that is going to be paid out for treatment. Not necessarily your treatment, but in other words, if you were, like whenever you go give money to charity, they'll say, okay, 15% of the money goes to run the charity and 85 is going to go to
the cause.
The cause. Medical insurance is
same kind of
number,
concept.
Right? Yeah. Dental insurance did not have a law that said it was a number.
Oh, really?
And they were like, no, we're meeting the number. It was tough. Maybe we're not, back and forth. And so now that number is there. And, the pushback is, well, we're such a small state. If we start putting all these rules, they're not, dental insurance are going to leave the state. They're not going to want to do business here, North Dakota. And I'm to me, there's a little bit of scare tactics. They keep doing business here. We're just kind of holding them to a standard. So that came through. But here's another thing that can happen right now. Let's say you're working at and it does happen. I just saw it the other day. I know some people will be like, oh, it's not the case. Well,
it's happened.
Certain people. You're working for company X and you have dental insurance. And you then quit, but you go show up to get your dental work.
Gotcha.
And you and they call and they're like, hey, what's his name have this dental insurance? Yep, they've got it, whatever. Well, then
you just quit.
You get it, but you get paid. But you quit, got fired and whatnot, but you still had the insurance. What happens is they'll say, yes, you have it. Then you get a phone call. The dental company or the dental practice gets a phone call 6 months later that says, you know what? It turns out that when you provided the service, they were no longer working for the company, so they no longer had the insurance. So you're going to have to owe us this amount of money.
Wow.
After the fact.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of
months after the fact too.
And so to me, that really doesn't make sense. If the dental office did the due diligence of calling to confirm that, yes, you are currently insured under this,
and they said at that time that they were insured,
and you provide the service, it doesn't matter that they're behind on their paperwork or whatever, that they're like, oh, well, no, it turns out we just hadn't got the notice from company X that they were now off their insurance because they had quit. Because now the dentist has to pay back and be like, okay, well, I guess. And now they have to then come after the customer for collections because whatnot. But
so who should be at fault there?
Well, I think that, you could arguably say that, if the individual honestly knew they no longer had the insurance, would that be fraud from the individual? But on the other hand, I think the person that should come after the individual for fraud, if we don't go that way, should then be the insurance company, because they're like, you used our insurance after you no longer had it.
Yeah.
But if the insurance is behind, I mean, today's day and age technology, you let somebody go, whatever, it takes but a click to
It's
be able
instant.
to say they're done. And so you're going to tell me it's not like we had to mail it and it took, 3 weeks to get it.
Like, what
We can do it.
Yeah.
And so why should the dentists
Be the ones
real
that take the
punished
brunt
for
of it. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right?
They have to take the loss on the service that's no longer going to be paid. And at the flip side, then they have to try to go after the client to try to get payment from them.
Exactly. I think this is between the client or between the patient and the insurance companies where the argument is. Not
with the dentist. Yeah.
Exactly. But and I say, well, you're just trying to protect these dentists and they make, so much money, whatever. No. Every time, and the dentist in this case, but anybody is taking a loss and another loss and another loss, that is going to make it so that other services have to start going up in price. And so at the end of the day, I really do feel it is affecting the patient, which is the customer, which is the resident of North Dakota, right? Which is the constituents, that elected me and everybody else. That is who is truly getting hurt. You do the math, and there's many cases where you're like, you know what? I'm better off just paying off full price than paying X amount I'm going to pay plus insurance.
Yeah.
So anyway, so how this became something for me that you would have, when we talked, 6 months ago and said, what things are you interested in?
This wasn't one that was on your radar.
No, but I found, got together with some people were lobbying this. We're talking about it, and I was looking at it, and I was like,
wait a second.
this just doesn't make sense. I mean, talk about the epitome of the opposite of antitrust, where, two companies can own 90% of the market, but one dentist has 2.5%, can't get together with another one and be like, hey, are you getting the same deal from this insurance company? Like, does this make sense?
Yeah,
the
it's
second
crazy.
they even discuss that,
Guess
the feds could be all over them.
Yeah. Wow. So it's just allowing that conversation to even happen at this point.
Yeah. Pass that on. I was very excited about it.
Well, sounds like a lot of productivity happened down in Bismarck.
Well, I'd like to think so. So I was very excited about that. But unfortunately, my bill on agency bills, that one
didn't go. You win some, you lose some. That's part of the game down there. It feels like, especially when there was over 1,000 bills that got put forward before you
Crazy. And
guys.
still 600 some passed.
Yeah.
65 is the number I want to say, but it could be wrong. Yeah. Crazy. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking some time and coming on today.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
It's been a good time.
Have any other big takeaways from your first session down?
You know what? I'm going to leave on a really positive note. Some people look at me funny, but I really do believe this. I had a bit of an experience, indirectly, albeit, working in seeing how U.S. Congress runs when I was at the Pentagon and working for generals who in turn had to testify in Congress. So, you're removed, obviously, 2-3.
You're seeing it indirectly,
will, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot that I did see. Granted, I wasn't in the halls, but you get the feeling that a lot of times, U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, a lot of people are in it, kind of, if you will, for themselves. They have an agenda, and there's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah.
There was an expectation that I had kind of coming in here. I mean, it's still politics at a smaller level, but I'd have to say that I was very, very encouraged, where I could probably count on one hand, and I'm talking, let's call it 200 people, 141 legislators, and between the executive and the judicial branch, say another 50 or 60 people that are truly, the movers
Right
and
around
shakers
200, yeah.
in that. Say the 200 people that are truly the movers and shakers making our government happen. Maybe count on one hand people that I thought that had an agenda and they were there for themselves.
That's neat.
Now, I'm not going to say that I agreed in policy with everyone else.
Yeah, for sure.
But without a doubt. Lots of disagreements. They doing things that they want to do that, dude, if you do this to the state, you're going to break it. You know what I mean? That seems a little bit socialist to me. I'm a capitalist. Let's not do that.
Hold on here.
But I do believe that in their heart, they honestly thought, no, this is going to make North Dakota better. So the fact that you're sharing the halls and sharing policy discussions with people that I really do believe, like I said, 99% of them in their heart are like, no, I really do think this is going to make North Dakota better. Agree or disagree with their policy, the betterment of North Dakota was in their mind. And that's something I did not expect and was so I was very happy to work with, and makes the whole experience just truly wonderful.
That's awesome to hear.
That's and I think we have
encouraging for sure.
Yeah,
extremely encouraging. Some may disagree, but I really
being there firsthand for the first time. That's how you took away from it. Yeah. I love that.
I was very happy. We have a great state. We might disagree on some policy issues,
but
some
I mean,
big button issues. It's property tax, water, right? As they say,
everybody's
for
different.
Drinking, water's for fighting, right? And I learned that well too. But yeah.
And everybody's a little different, so you have to expect a little bit of that internal conflict.
Exactly,
but it's when they're pushing it for the right reasons. That's the thing.
Heart, they believe it, and so you can have
you can live with that. Yeah.
So very happy overall. We have a great state. I'm very happy to be a part of it in this way now. Not as a constituent, but now hopefully helping constituents.
Absolutely,
awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking time, spend some time with us here on North Hill in the heart of District 40.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. It is.
So, no, glad you did, and it's been great talking about the experience and also some of the issues that you guys had to face. So.
I've had a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. We'll have to do it again sometime when you're not flying around North Dakota.
I know, right? This afternoon, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Back to work.
Exactly.
That's right. Somehow. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everyone for watching this today. Again, we're going to keep plugging it. June 6th, June 17th. Let's get the date right. June 17th, 6 p.m. at the Mouse River Players Theater.
Downtown Minot.
Mayoral debate. Be there as we go and figure out who should be the next mayor of Minot. Of course, voting will happen a little bit later, but
August 5th.
But that's unimportant right now. Later. Just worry about June 17th. So
get to the debate. That's the important part.
Thanks for watching this episode. Have a great rest of your day.